Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Graventon. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, here we are. It's in the immediate aftermath of that disastrous fiasco known as the 2016 presidential election cycle. And already, President-elect Donaldolph Julius Caesar Trumpolini Trumpkins is starting to walk back all of the multitude and myriad of promises that he made throughout the campaign trail. We see that with respect to primarily what was known as the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, what sane and rational people call Obamacare or fail care, he originally put out this line of, well, we're going to repeal and replace, which just turns my stomach into knots, because you don't want to replace something at a federal level that is not constitutionally enumerated. That's just how our federalist system works. But to now saying, well, I had a conversation with Obama, and he commented on how good my smally hands looked and that I could build health care like I did a tower, and therefore we're going to keep parts of it, including forcing insurance companies to accept people with pre-existing conditions and allowing kiddos to stay on their parents' plan until they're 26 years old. That'd be fine if these companies had done that on their own. If they had done it of their own fruition, that is what a private free market does. But that's not the case. What we have here is that they were being told and are being told by the federal government how to run their business. That is completely contrary to the way that our free market economy operates. Now, I know that Jeremy has mentioned on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that the economy per se, meaning in and of itself, is not that important. It is rather a mere symptom of the overarching problem that is ailing and afflicting this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And he's right. The problem is care. And when you look at all of these other centralized governmental programs that overreach, you see that it is a departure, a direct divorcement and distancing from the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, which, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, the Supremacy Clause, is the supreme law of the land. Now, we haven't heard any discussion of that from Trump, but we have seen him put up the alt-Reich's top Reichsfuhrer there with Stephen K. Bannon of Breitbart News. We see that he put Rinse and Repeatus in as the White House Chief of Staff. So in my last episode, we talked about it being stirring up the muck instead of draining the swamp. Well, not only is he stirring up the swamp, or the muck within the swamp, he's putting Swamp Thing in the head of his new White House.
Here's the problem again. And with the whole Obamacare, as you mentioned, it is violative of the Constitution. Not only the Supremacy Clause, but Article 1, Section 7, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, which is Bill of Attainder ex post facto. The problem is a lot of people don't understand this. You cannot have anything constituted as law that is in violation of the Constitution. Period. That makes it directly violative of the Supremacy Clause. So therefore, because it violates those things, now we look at it, well, with it being a bill of attainder, you can look at the Eighth Amendment being violated. Excessive fines. Well, why is it an excessive fine? Because there's no judicial process under what the bill of attainder is to legally penalize these individuals by giving them a fine. A fine is directly attached to a judicial proceeding or ruling that is against an individual. You can't have that. Therefore, automatically the Eighth Amendment, and then with the states allowing this, not interceding on behalf of their citizens, the 10th Amendment is violated. But even more so than that, the 9th Amendment is violated because it is utilizing the Constitution to deride and deprive individuals of their enumerated rights. There's nothing in the Constitution that grants any authority whatsoever to the federal government at any level or even at a state level to institute legislation regarding medical care or health insurance, period. And I guarantee you that that's the way it is. And Randy, you know that I wrote a paper on this, and I was accused of plagiarizing in that paper. And folks, I'm going to tell you right now, the individual that I was accused of plagiarizing is by the name of Nathaniel Stewart, who happens to be a U.S. federal attorney. So little old me gets accused of plagiarizing an article written by a U.S. federal attorney, which that article, I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head, but that article was a slam against Obamacare. I simply took everything that was stated in that article, which is common knowledge because it was laws that were stated in the Constitution that was stated, which proves it's not plagiarism, and I expanded on it. I was more definitive in what it was, and I took it a step further and actually brought in other violations of the law, federal law, and the Constitution and state laws. So, again, when we have an individual, and this is why I have a real problem with the term repeal and replace. First of all, you cannot repeal something that is void of legal existence to begin with, because there's nothing there to repeal. It can't legally exist, so how can you repeal something that can't legally exist? Okay, you can't do it. And then to replace, well, you're going to replace it with what? More unconstitutional acts? More unconstitutional rhetoric? He even said he wants to keep certain parts of it after his discussion with Hussein Obama. But why? You can't do this. So here we have an individual who bolstered up one of the main talking points of his whole campaign to lure people in, reel them, let's get the rope, we got them lassoed, let's just pull them in and cinch that knot loose so we can't get rid of them. All for what? To do nothing but prove to the world that he is a fraud, like we said he was from the very onset of his campaign.
Well, and Jeremy, it goes to what he said for the vast majority of his 70 years spent on God's green earth. He has always been one who supports this sort of frothing at the mouth, Fabian socialist leftist position. And even during the time of the campaign trail, back during the primary process, we recall that there was this town hall that he had on CNN in which a audience member had asked him what he thought the three most important duties and obligations as well as responsibilities of the federal government are. And he had said healthcare and education primarily. And then he also tried to make it defense. He wanted to go on that hawkish position of being strong on national security and national defense. This, even though he basically said 9/11 was George W. Bush's fault, which, no, that was actually his buddy Clinton's fault. Bush did have some problems in addressing it, but it comes back to Trump will say anything to anyone that is the audience before him to try and sell them. That's why he is a master salesman. It's not that he's a great businessman. In fact, the vast majority of the businesses that he started are no longer with us because they failed. They turned out to be abject failures. And we can't just ignore that. That is part of who he is. And his alleged business acumen has come back to haunt the companies that he associated with. All of his business associates were essentially screwed, for lack of a better term. But with respect to him walking back on Obamacare, I think it's important that we review the things he actually said from his mouth itself, because again, it shows us without a without a shadow of the doubt that he was never once fully committed to being truthful or honest about his position of repealing Obamacare. So I'm going to go ahead and cue up this video now, and then we'll discuss it in further detail.
Robert Keitlinger, he's retired from the U.S. Army after serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's now a student at Marquette University, and he says he's undecided. Welcome. Robert?
Good evening, Mr. Trump. In your opinion, what are the top 3 functions of the United States government?
Say it again.
In your opinion, what are the top 3 functions of the United States government?
Well, the greatest function of all by far is security for our nation. I would also say healthcare. I would also say education. I mean, there are many, many things, but I would say the top 3 are security, security, security. We have to have security for our country so that we can continue to exist as a country. We are in danger. Thousands and thousands of people are infiltrating our country. We don't know who they are. There is a very vicious world. We're living in a very vicious world. And we're doing something that is against a lot of very smart people's wishes. I can tell you it's totally against my wishes.
So top 3, you're saying security?
Security. I would say, I say all top 3 are security, but healthcare, education would be probably 3.
There you have it. There you have it. The top 3 are security, education, which, remember, he said that he was completely against Common Core, and healthcare. So there we have it right there. He's trying to say that the federal government should be in charge of those things, and that is the highest duty, obligation, but above all responsibility of the federal government. Except that where do you find this in the Constitution? And the reason that I stress that is, as we all know, in a federalist republic like that of the United States of America, you have to be able to trace all federal governing power and authority back to powers that were specifically enumerated unto the government. In other words, specifically granted to the government by the supreme law of the land, which is none other than the United States Constitution. The only place that you're going to find that is in Article 9, Section Existent, Clause 0, right next to the bovine excrement clause, because it ain't there. That's just the way it is. And again, it shows that Trump is not serious about governing in a restrained position. And the reason that we, more so now than ever, need executive restraint at the top of the ticket is because the executive branch has divorced itself and so far distanced itself from the powers enumerated unto it in Article 2 that establishes the executive branch of government and lays out its duties and responsibilities, that the president essentially can overstep their bounds. And that's the problem that we have. We see that he's walking back all of his promises, which means he's not serious, and that he is going to put our republic at jeopardy. But not only that, he is going to weaken the other avenues of government by which conservative voices have moved forward to bring about great change and reform after a progressive group has assumed the reins of power and basically run ramshod over the country.
I don't know if you noticed this, Randy, but when Mr. Keitlinger was introduced, the audience applauded. It was quite an extensive applause, tremendous applause, right? Okay. except for Trump. Trump's little smally tiny hands did not go clappity clap clap, and I don't even think they would have if El Jefe would have said please clap. He wouldn't have clapped. That tells me, see, little things like that, I pick up on things like this, and little things like that irritate the living hell out of me. Here's a man who put his life, his sole means of existence on the line for our liberties and freedoms to defend and protect them. And an individual, the sea Kyle quaffinator douchebag, doesn't even acknowledge his existence by applauding him with everybody else. Because he thinks, what, is he too good for it? It looked like he was a bit perturbed by the guy's mere presence or even asking him a question. It's like he was saying, well, do I even have to answer this? Really? Come on. I mean, his body language speaks volumes. But again, that's a testament to his own mind, his own so-called logic. Because he doesn't want to answer these questions. He didn't, and it's just like he walked it back. I would say security, those are the top three. Well, guess what? That's one thing, you moron. Learn how to damn count. It's one thing. Well, but then he walks it back with education and housing.
We know that he struggles with counting. That's why he ran so many companies into the ground. But again, what we see is he's trying to give attributes of power to the government that the government does not rightfully have. And the problem that comes in there is when you look at the natural order of things, what we refer to as the natural law, that is the philosophy that forms the bedrock foundation of our system of polity, is that it's supposed to be within the family. The family is where government and the fundamental building block of society begins. And it goes to where the people have the ability to exert the greatest amount of control over the government that has more of the what they call near plenary or near absolute power. And thus, the federal government, the centralized government, being at the top, being the furthest removed from the people, is one of expressly limited powers. The problem is, Trump does not believe that the federal government should have limited powers. And he had said that he would continue to abuse the executive order power as Obama had, just to get his way if Congress wouldn't go along with him. Folks, the reason that we have experienced a constitutional crisis throughout the two disastrous terms of the Barack Hussein Obama regime is because we had a chief executive that refused to run with constraint, that refused to basically govern via constraint as is required by the Constitution. And unfortunately, what we have with President-elect Trump is a continuation of that. I would love to be proved wrong about that, folks. I would love to be proved wrong. I would love for him to actually be a great president that rules via the Constitution. However, I am a realist that has to see what the great weight of the evidence shows, and there is substantial circumstantial evidence and direct evidence that indicates that Trump will not govern by the Constitution, because he himself admitted that he has never once read the Constitution from cover to cover because he found no inherent nor any intrinsic value in the document. And think about this. He's going to be getting up there on Inauguration Day. And during the inaugural address, before he gives that, he's going to have to raise his right hand to swear the oath of office. And that entire oath circulates around the Constitution. It is to the best of their ability to uphold, to serve, and protect the Constitution. But if you don't find any value in it, how in the hell are you going to be able to protect it?
Well, see, in this thing, let's look at that key word there in that oath. Ability. Now, an individual that has no regard or care or sees no value in anything, first of all, they're not going to entertain that as something that's viable for them. Therefore, they're not going to put out any effort. And effort requires ability. So he's automatically voiding himself of having any ability whatsoever. Now, people would try and make the argument, well, it says to the best of their ability. But here's the thing. How do you define what the best of somebody's ability is? Because, see, if you're seeking the office, which he's won the office, okay, so now you're president-elect, isn't it incumbent upon you to, I don't know, acquire or actually have the necessity or the necessary tools at your disposal, or wherewithal or knowledge of the Constitution? Because that's where your abilities come from. Your abilities come from having knowledge and working experience. He doesn't have any working experience with the Constitution other than trashing it and jumping up and down on it and trying to rip it to shreds with his smally hands. That's about it. He'll use the Constitution, as he's done in the past, to achieve what he wants. Not for the betterment of anybody else, but see, even using the Constitution for the betterment of other people, in some ways, can be violative of the Constitution. Because you cannot take a document like that and use it for the betterment of one person, because ultimately that will disparage the rights of another individual. Which again brings us back to the 9th Amendment. You cannot use the Constitution for certain purposes while disparaging the rights of other individuals. This is what he intends on doing. So where's his ability of even upholding that oath of office? It's not there. It's absolutely not there. Just like, Trump vodka. It's gone. It does not exist. He may have had that ability at one point in time, but it's no longer there. And I would like somebody to show us, please. I notice we have 2 viewers right now, or 2 viewers watching us right now. Please, leave us a comment. If you think Trump ever had the ability, or still possesses the ability, to uphold and to protect and defend the Constitution and actually abide by that oath. I'm not seeing it happening. I'm just not. It's not there. He has not shown anything. And just like you, Randy, I'm a realist. Okay, I'm a person who operates on absolutes and evidentiary practices. I need to see the evidence before I make a clear and concise decision. And the evidence shows me thus far, until proven otherwise, that he is void of that ability. He does not care about the Constitution. He will not care about it. He has no desire to care about it. Again, because it doesn't have value. And he only attaches himself and exhibits things that he sees value in, which is himself and money.
Here's the other thing. He will do what we have said should never be done from a government position, and that is attempting to turn to foreign nations to bring in foreign law. We know that is something that, say, a justice like Ruth Bader Ginsburg would want, or something that Barack Hussein Obama would do, because they do not find value, going on the line of what you were just saying there, Jeremy, in the Constitution. We know that Trump, even during the campaign trail, went out there and tried to claim that we need to be emulating some of the most socialist countries on earth with their plans for education. And that included Norway and Denmark and China. Yes, China. The very China that he wants to place a 45% tariff on. And believe me, folks, that will just come back to haunt us, because that expense will be passed on to the consumer. But he was praising their education system and complaining about the costs of ours. And again, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, say not just to take what we're saying at face value, but to let you hear it from the lips of the man himself. And so I'm going to go ahead and cue this up, and then we will discuss it in further detail. So here we go.
By far, right? Number one, so high that number two doesn't even exist. You have Norway, Denmark, Sweden, China, these are the best countries in terms of education, right? These are ranked the top 4 or 5. Great countries, great education. They spend a fraction of what we do.
What?
Wait.
Is that in the best interests of us?
Wait a second. Great countries, great education. So since when has China ever become a great country? Been a great country. Not in our lifetimes. Not in the lifetime of our republic. See, again, he wants to make America great again. And I hear people, all these people saying, now the catchphrase is MAGA, MAGA. You sound like a damn baby whining to be breastfed by your dilapidated, neurotic mother. Shut the hell up. MAGA, MAGA, shut up. The United States of America has never ceased in being great. Because our Constitution is still the supreme law of the land. That is what makes our country great. That is what made it great from its inception. And the wherewithal of our founding fathers and the individuals who framed the Constitution that created this republic. Now, last I checked, Randy, we still are a constitutional representative republic, which means we're better than China. And if China gets pissed off about this, too bad. Because I can tell them right now, Feifei du Pien, how's that? Okay? That's what I think of China. But believe me, it's a great country with a great educational system. Then why don't you go ahead and move there? God knows you've already moved one of your companies there. The little hats with MAGA on it. Yeah, guess what? They're made in China. But China's great.
Don't you love that? Don't you love that? And here's the other thing he liked about China. Back in the 80s, he had basically sung the praises of the communist dictatorship in China when they responded to the Tiananmen Square incident. He has this well-established track record of embracing totalitarianism. And the leftists didn't want to hit on that. And folks, we do not agree with the Democrats. We do not agree with the left. We want this country to go back to the Constitution because that is the way that we will restore prosperity. But with respect to his singing the praises of Kim Jong-il, the late one, for being able to control the generals, that shows a complete lack of understanding of how the system works over there. Of course the generals are going to obey the little tin pot dictator. Why? Because he'll kill them if they don't.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, look at Kim Jong-un. His own uncle, or whatever family member it was, apparently made some suggestion about the military, taking a different route or changing something up, and he had him executed in public.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
that's the way they do it. That's the way they do it.
That's a great country. That's a country I just want to live there. It's so great. It's just so great. Maybe I don't know. Herr Trumpolini can go ahead and move to China and make China great again. Because see. At one point in time in the world...
Hey, it's got a great wall. Hey,
it's got
that already fits.
It's already built. It's already built. He doesn't have to worry about building it. Yeah, and what's he going to do? Hey, that's okay. The wall was my idea. It was my idea way back then, because I got it from, the quaff, that transplanted onto my skull.
Genghis quaff.
Genghis quaff. Yeah, there we go. So here, why does Trumpolini just go ahead and move his ass to China? Okay, make China great again, because at one point in time in the world's history, I have to believe, Randy, that China was great.
Oh, they were very great. They were the leaders of so many things. And,
Gunpowder.
Gunpowder. I mean, we do have to praise them for that. Yeah. But here's the thing with Trump. It's all of those Scandinavian countries, they're known for being among the most socialist on earth. China is communist, and yet he claims to be a conservative. Conservatives would not support that very sort of centralized control type of government.
No.
It is diametrically opposed to the freedoms and those natural, those natural rights that belong to us, our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And you see, Trump doesn't care about that. When he was trying to build that casino limousine parking lot, he was going to abuse eminent domain to try and take that house away from that lady so that he could build that stupid parking lot. And oh, by the way, the casino he had there is not there anymore. Why?
It failed.
Because he ran it into the ground. He
failed.
bankrupted it. Yes, it
failed.
Yes, and here's what we can take away from that. He is willing to play reckless with the rights of other people. Not just the rights, the lives of other people. When you act with such reckless disregard, it does place the entire standing of the nation in jeopardy. It's why we say that it's the office that you support and that you respect, because it's whoever holds that office being the chief representative of the American people. I'm afraid of what may happen with Russia with respect to all of this, because Russia has already come forth and said that they had communications with Trump all throughout that campaign. We know that Vladimir Putin kind of skipped to his loo to the salivating mainstream media to sing his praises of Trump. And then that same guy that said that there would be nuclear war if Trump was not elected came out and said that we've avoided World War III. Why? Why is it that we can sit there and ignore these things and act as though this isn't a problem? Yes, Hillary Clinton was corrupt. There's no question about that. We know she's corrupt, and she didn't win. We're very ecstatic about that. But I am very concerned about what the future holds in store for this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, because we are in dangerous times. We are in a time when ISIS is strong. We are in a time when our sovereignty is hanging in the balance. But we already see that he's walking back some of the statements that he made with respect to so-called immigration reform. He's saying that, no, we can't get all of them, but he'll immediately deport 2 to 3 million. How? Again, where and how? At this point, all of the platitudes need to stop. We need to see how he's going to govern. He needs to come forth and convince the American people that he is capable of governing. This isn't a campaign anymore. And that's part of the problem I have with Stephen K. Bannon being placed in such a lofty position. Here is a man who is a self-avowed Leninist. Yes, folks, a self-avowed Leninist who is the chief counselor for the president-elect? How in the hell is that conservative? Last I checked, Lenin was one of the left skis. He was one of the ones out there goose-stepping to the communist tune.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, we made the prediction throughout the whole campaign that Trump couldn't win. Trump's not going to win. Hillary's going to beat Trump and this and that. Well, it seems that on the face of our prediction that we were wrong. However, with Trump walking all of these things back, if you look at how he mentions health or with healthcare, it's no different than what Hillary's platform was on healthcare. It's not.
No, in fact, it's further to the left.
It's further to the left. And I say it's no different because both platforms are in violation of the Constitution, period. Okay? So now let's look at the education. We mentioned, he thinks China's great, Norway's great with their education, great education, this and that. It's far too expensive here in the United States. Wait a second. Didn't Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders both say that education was far too expensive? In fact, they wanted free education for college students. It was too expensive and free. So again, yes, Trump physically may have won the election, but all of this walking back that he's doing, all of these, redactions of his own platform and promises it's kind of like taking, a pile of crap, plating it in gold, a very, very thin layer of gold. We'll call it, like a blonde gold. Okay. And then once you start to peel back that layer, it's eroding away, and he is eroding himself away because so many people now have buyer's remorse, so to speak. They're disappointed in him. Well, it's not what he said. We warned you. We warned you that this would happen. Did Fox News warn of this? No. Did CNN warn of this? No. Did any of the other mainstream media and talking heads and pundits warn of this? No. We warned you of this. We brought it to the forefront. We were the first ones and only ones to bring out all of this stuff with Trump and putting it into effect and putting it into perspective. Did we find all the research and first come up with it? No, not all of it. But we put it into perspective. We showed the timeline of potential disaster on how this is going to happen. So when we said that Hillary Clinton was going to win, beneath the surface of that pile of gold-plated crap, guess what? Is a pile of crap. It's no different. His platitudes, his platform that he's modifying now, and all of these things that he's doing are no different than what Hillary Clinton would have done. But yet, people still sing his praises. Why?
Well, it's because they think that he's great. They think that he has gone forth and saved this nation from Hillary. They've allowed themselves to be blinded. They've allowed themselves to be blinded by raw emotionalism. And then we see that those that he had promised things to before have kind of backed off of promises they've made as well. Mm-hmm. Remember that we had Dr. Ben, I'm a victim, get me a new suit Carson, who said that he wanted to be involved in either healthcare or education. Well, he's now come forth and said that he doesn't want to be directly involved, only in an official capacity. So why the hell did he go in and throw his support to Trump? It was because he did it for a damn book deal. We said that too. We said that too, and it really does come down to that. It shows us that there has been a hoodwink that has been orchestrated and perpetrated against the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. And of course, that's the problem with this type of two-card game, two-card Monte game that is being played here. They are playing fast and loose with our rights, and we cannot afford to allow that to happen, particularly in the immediate aftermath of the two disastrous terms of this Barack Hussein Obama regime. And we know that with the immigration issue, this is what they, who were the loudest acolytes, I'm talking people like Ann Coulter, said was the most important thing. That she didn't care if he was running around committing abortions on a table in the White House or in the Rose Garden, as long as he was true to basically ending the torrent of illegal aliens pouring across through our porous southern border. He's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. In fact, Giuliani, Rudolph the gun-grabbing Nazi Giuliani, went out there and was saying, "Oh, it's going to take him a while to do it, but he'll do it. He will." You know what that is? That's New York talk for go Farouk yourself. That's literally what they are telling the American people. And yes, for the past year and 2 months, we have been warning that this would be the direct result. We said that if by some cruel twist or fluke of fate that he was able to secure the reins of power, that this is what would happen. And yes, you want to know what the cruel twist of fate was? It was Comey coming out there after he said that they wouldn't investigate her anymore, saying that he would, and then, what was it, a day or two after, less than a week later, "Oh, we read through all of it. We read through all of it, and it doesn't change it. Yeah, she's still guilty as hell, but we ain't going to do crap."
Right. And for individuals that think that Trump actually has the authority to throw Hillary in prison, again, we've touched on this. We've touched on it. First of all, he doesn't have the authority to do it. He doesn't have the authority. There's no constitutional provision that allows him to say, you know what, you're guilty of this, you're going to prison. Or in Trump's case, it would have been jail. Because he said so as much in the second or third debate. You know, she said, well, blah, 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 this, that. He says, no, I'd have you, you'd be in jail. You won't do that because you'd be in jail. He doesn't understand simple terminology regarding the law. Jail is for offenses that carry a punishment of less than 365 days. For simple crimes or misdemeanors, so on and so forth. This is a federal offense, what she did. And Trump even said that he's not going to do anything to her because
they're good people.
She's good people. I don't see any, no, I don't want to ruin people's lives. They're good people, this and that. But hey, you're talking about deporting 2 to 3 million people right off the bat. And you're looking at, as you know, a leftist would say, well, you're better yet, let's take, who was it? Kucinich? Oh, you're going to destroy the families. You know,
yeah. No. That was John Kasich. That was Kasich, John the Mushroom. My dad
Kasich,
was a mailman.
Kucinich, you know, what at this
crazy.
point, what difference does it make? You know, but John Kasich, you know, you're going to uproot people's lives, destroy their families by deporting them. But Trump, hey, I want to deport these people. Now, some of those individuals, regardless of breaking the law, may be good-intentioned people. You know, but they still broke the law. Good intentions don't mean crap when the law is broken. People have to be held accountable. Now, Trump said he's going to put Hillary in prison throughout his whole campaign. He said he was going to put Hillary in prison. He had his supporters have put up signs. They've put up effigies of Hillary in prison suits or in prison cells with oranges. You know, standing next to Trump, he couldn't tell the difference, but still. He said that was one of his campaign promises. He's going to put Hillary in prison. She has to pay for this. And
yeah, but you remember what he said. You remember what he said. That that anything that he said during the campaign trail could not be held as the gospel truth because it was a mere suggestion. In other words, some little birdie whispering in that quaff-like ear of his of, say this, maybe that will work. You know, it was crap. It was a bunch of worthless nonsense garbage. And that's the thing. He's a charlatan. He is a fraud, a huckster, a con artist, a carnival barker. And that is not what we look for in a leader. Now, I've already heard a lot of the Lion Branch Trumpidians who are, you know, chanting louder than lollards in the Trumpidian tabernacle that, you know, oh, if you speak out in any way that's negative against Don Trumpy, then you are hoping for him to fail. I'm not hoping for him to fail. Because if we hope for him to fail, that means we're hoping for the entire leadership and edifice of this country to basically be decapitated. I don't want that. What I want is to go back to strict adherence to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution at all levels of government. That means even if it had been Ted Cruz, the ideal situation, at least in our opinion, for what would have been the best outcome for the 2016 election cycle, if he had strayed in any way, shape, form, or fashion from the Constitution, we would have been the first ones out there waving the flag saying, hey, get back to the Constitution. We do it with Trump. We do it with Hillary. We do it with a one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater.
Well, and that's the thing, Randy, because you and I, and there's thousands of people in the United States still to this day that I have to believe understand and exemplify accountability. See, if either one of us ran for president and won the seat and were president, if it was me or if it was you, the adverse of that, of each other, we would do that with each other. We would hold each other accountable. If you were president, I'd hold you accountable. I would have the same expectations for you as I would for anybody else. And see, that, folks, that is the power that people don't realize that they have. It's the power of accountability. The power of accountability comes from our birthright as citizens. It is granted to us and endowed to us by A, our Creator, and B, it is protected and guaranteed by our shared Constitution. People look at the Constitution as saying, well, I have this right, I have this right. Those rights come with responsibilities. And that because you exercise those rights with the duty of responsibility attached to it, that means that you are being held accountable for yourself and other people. The accountability is not a standalone thing. It's cause and effect. You can only be held accountable or expect to hold other people accountable if you yourself are willing to be held accountable. And the only way you can be held accountable or be willing to be held accountable yourself for your actions is if you are responsible with your God-given rights.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, Jeremy, the other thing that I want to bring up here is you were talking about how throughout this campaign season, he said that he was going to lock her up. You know, that was the chant. That was what they kept repeating over and over again at all of those large Trump rallies. It was lock her up, we're going to hold her accountable.
Lock her up.
But yeah, and we know that he just recently came out and said that she was a good person and he didn't want to hurt him, and that's why he's not going to convene a special prosecutor. Well, this is not the first time he said good things about the Clintons. It's not the first time he's sung her praises. And again, we say, don't just take our word for it, take it from the lips of the man himself. So here we go.
Well, first of all, I know her very well, and I know her husband very well, and I like them both. And they are, just really terrific people. I like them both very much, but I think you'll be looking at the record of Hillary Clinton and how did she do as Secretary of State, probably above and beyond everybody else and everything else. You'll be looking at her record, and everybody else will be looking at her record. I don't know that Benghazi, it doesn't seem to have resonated like perhaps it should have, but many other things have come up, and the world is in turmoil. And I think that a lot of people will be looking at Hillary's record as Secretary of State, and she will be defending that record, and I'm sure she'll do a good job of defending it, but that will be the thing they will be going for.
Then why didn't you go for it? Why aren't you going for it now? Why do you say one thing, then say another, then go back to saying what you originally said, and then never consistently follow through? Well, the reason he doesn't is because he doesn't have any core values or principles. He is just willing to say and to custom tailor a message to a particular audience. You know what that makes him? A politician. And remember that one of the chords that was sounded over and over again to the point of being ad nauseum throughout the 2016 election cycle was that, well, we trust Don Trumpolini, the comb-over Führer, because he's not a politician and he says it as it is. All right, if he says it as it is, he said that he liked Hillary and that he liked Bill. And then he said that, she's a criminal, we need to lock her up. Now he's saying he doesn't want to do anything to her because he likes her, she's a good person. So you tell me, what is the real Trump? Was he calling it straight back then? Or was he calling it straight on the campaign trail? Or is he calling it straight now when he's gone back to what he said before he was on the campaign trail? This is what we mean when we said that he is consistently inconsistent. And this is exactly what we warned of. And I've had some good friends come to me and say, I'm just shocked and surprised that he's doing this so quickly. I mean, I thought that he would have been restrained. Here's the problem. When you buy into the notion of voting for the lesser of two evils, you essentially give permission to the powers that be to continue to act in a corrupt, unconstitutional fashion. He is literally, at this moment, as we sit here, speaking into these microphones, conveying this message unto you, feeling invulnerable. He thinks he can do no wrong. And that goes back to yet another thing he said, since he is such a straight shooter, after all. Speaking of shooting, he went out and said that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose a single supporter. So we have a man who is so conceited and so vainglorious that he thinks he can go out there and shoot people. And I would not put it past him to believe that he can do it, because he said that Hillary was good, and then he said that he was going to, build the wall and make Mexico pay for it. Well, now he's saying we have to pay for it and Mexico will reimburse us. Again, how? How? None of the important things are answered. None of the true explanations that are necessary to place this nation back onto the path to prosperity have been explained. And that is one of the major problems that we've had with him over and over again.
Again, it's been a consistent problem with him. It's just like I mentioned, we obtained all this information, tidbits of information from here, from there, different sources for this, different sources that, a lot of it straight from him. And we took the time to put it all into perspective to show people how disastrous this is going to be. See, if there's a silver lining in all of this chaotic mess, this quaftopia of a nightmare, let it be this: he has been proven to be the fraud that we said he was. It has been proven that there still is individuals willing to uphold the Constitution, to stand and fight for this republic. There's still a modicum of belief that this country never stopped being great, all because of Trump's disastrous actions. So that's the silver lining to take from this. Okay? So when we look at this, yes, is he a failure? Well, it hasn't been solidified as him being a failure as president yet. As president-elect, absolutely, he's a failure right off the bat. A day after he won the election, he started backwalking these things, backpedaling on issues. See, I'm an individual, and the way I was raised, your word is everything. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. You follow through with it. Because the second you don't do that, it doesn't matter how many good things you've followed through with, no matter how many things you've accomplished, all it takes is that one thing to where you go back on your word and you're destroyed for the rest of your life as far as credibility goes, because you'll never get that back. And it's like the saying that I mentioned before, little sign we have at work, that we did have at work. It was taken down for whatever reason, doesn't matter. And it said this: trust takes a lifetime to achieve, but only minutes to lose and be gone forever. So when it comes down to it, people trust him? Yep. Do people have a main reason or a major reason to not trust him anymore? Absolutely. Because when you give your word on something and then you go back on it, such as he's already done, oh, I'm going to repeal and replace. Well, if you look at those two words, again, aside from the unconstitutional aspects of those words regarding Obamacare or any healthcare legislation whatsoever, let's look at the words repeal and replace. Repeal means to, take away, to discard. Replace means to take something, remove it, take it away, and then put something else in its place, in its stead. But yet he's not going to do that now. because he's going to keep certain aspects of it. See, if you're going to repeal and replace something like Obamacare, again, setting aside the unconstitutionality of it, just for, grins and giggles, let's say it was a valid law and you're going to repeal and replace it. That means you have to take the law in its entirety, because you cannot parse out the law and take what you want from it and then discard everything else, because the way that it's written, and I've read the Affordable Care Act, I've read the whole entire legislation. I've also read Romney Care. I've also read Hillary Care or Clinton Care. In fact, I have a bona fide, legitimate library reference shelf copy of it. And some point in time on a future episode, I will show you all that copy. So the point is, you cannot parse out these laws and just take from it what you think is good and get rid of everything else, because it's all interactive. It's cause and effect. It rolls over and it's all binding amongst itself. Because if any part of that law was unconstitutional, then the whole law becomes unconstitutional. You have to accept it as a whole and not a bit in a parcel. So repeal and replace, but I'm going to keep certain provisions of it. Wrong. Wrong answer, Donnie. Again, you have just broken a promise. You went back on your word. That means the way I was raised, you cannot be trusted. Ever.
Yeah, he can't be. And that's the thing. It's that he never really did think of things other than from his own perspective, from benefiting himself. And self-preservation, yes, that's natural, but to seek this sort of office without having the best interests of the American people at heart, that is problematic. It goes against all that we hold near and dear, both as a nation and as a people. And it continues to be something that we have to be fully aware of. There are dangers of allowing someone who only cares about themselves to wield the reins of power here. And the reason I say that is, think about this. He could use the government to basically benefit his company for his children. The way that he could try and do insider trading that's not blocked by governments. A lot of people don't realize that Congress can sit there and engage in insider trading. They're not forbidden to do it. It's just the private citizens that are. That kind of thing can be used by someone who is looking to enrich their families. And think about it. Back some 16 years ago, Trump even said he would be the first person to ever make money from running for president. Now, folks, if you thought he was a straight shooter, if you thought he said what he meant, then that means you have to think that he said what he meant even back then. And it tells me that his goal was to make money. And recall, he had said all throughout on the campaign trail, in fact, you can go back and look through our archives and find the episodes where we even brought up the sound clips of him saying that if he lost, it wasn't that it would be bad for the American people. It's not that it would be bad for the nation or that the opposition's policies would get put in, because he agrees with a lot of them. Yeah, it would be a waste of time and money for him. And that's what it comes down to. It was self-aggrandizement. It was self-interest that drove him to do all of this. And so when you stop and think about that, I want you to ask yourself, is that good for the nation? That is the rhetorical question I think needs to be addressed. Is that good for the nation?
Well, Randy, I look at that when he said that if he lost, it would be, and I think he said that in New Jersey, or somewhere, some, northeastern coast state. If he lost, it would be a waste of time and money, and he would never, and he did this number. All of you, and point at the people as to single them out. I would never forgive you. Now, first of all, who is he to offer forgiveness to anybody? Oh, wait a second. He's the Orange Caesar, the Cheeto Julius. That's what he is. He thinks he is God himself. Okay? He thinks he is God himself. He thinks it again, proof of this is he says, well, I've never had to ask for forgiveness. Horse crap. Everybody is born with sin. Therefore, only in order to absolve your sin, you must ask forgiveness. You can't absolve yourself of sin.
He doesn't believe it.
No, he doesn't.
And then we see that the evangelicals went for him, or some claiming to be evangelicals went for him. Remember, that was the big thing against Cruz during the early part of the primary process. Again, it goes to show that there was a false media narrative. The media
was an attack on religion.
Trump. They pushed Trump in the beginning because they thought that they could get Trump to win the nomination and then he would be too weak to beat Hillary. And he almost was. You know, everybody sits here and says that it was inevitable that he would win. No, it really wasn't. It really wasn't. It wasn't until that second email thing came out that he finally got it.
And see, here's the thing. I talk about this whole thing of him saying, I'll never forgive you, this and that and everything else. Well, Randy, imagine if you and I made the statement, if this republic fails, if our Constitution goes by the wayside and is completely and utterly destroyed and done away with, well, it'd be a waste of time and energy and money for us. It'd just be a waste of our time. I mean, we'd still endure in this net. We would just find something else to do. We would, tailor our message and tailor our show and our lives to fit the narrative of whatever socialistic or communist or Trumpist regime that would come about.
We've got some comments that I want to address.
Okay.
Donna Chapass, it's pond scum. You're absolutely right. Fool's gold. Head on. Trumpadum. Yes. And then Donna also said that Trump will be a populist president. He isn't interested in the Constitution. He's going to be another Obama, just a different flavor. Yes, he's going to be the cheese fondama is what it's going to be. And then Glenn Roxy Weo, Drumpf is not draining the swamp. He's pouring more muck in. Glenn, more power to you. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. We do appreciate that. And yes, what you are expressing here is exactly what we have felt all along. You are tapping into exactly the concerns that we should all have with respect to Trump, because Trump is not looking out for us. And that's the thing. You can try and tell this to as many of his supporters as possible. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to continue to suffer from acute ostrich syndrome.
Yeah, but Trump. Yeah, but Trump.
Shoving their head up their posterior as opposed to the sand. These dangers, they're there. They are exposing themselves, and Trump is not going to walk anything back that really matters to him. And recall that much earlier in the program, we pointed to how he had said in that CNN town hall meeting that it should be education,
housing,
and healthcare, and security. Well, 2 of those things ain't in the Constitution. That's just the way it goes.
Well, here's the thing. Let's talk about that security issue. Okay, yes, security is in the Constitution. I believe, what is it, Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution? The primary responsibility of the government is to protect the states from invasion and ensure, and prevent from domestic violence, so on and so forth. Yes, it is our government's responsibility to make sure that our nation is secure, not only as a whole, but individual states. And that duty and that delegated authority also transcends into the states themselves and then ultimately to we the people. Now, here's the thing about security. How secure are we as a nation if we are restricted in the exercising and the retention of our constitutional rights? How secure in a nation are we? Was our nation secure in 1776? As, the Confederate States of America, or, the colonies. How about in 1787? Just prior to the Constitution being ratified, 2 years prior to it being ratified in September 17th, 1789. From September 17th, 1789, when our republic was formed and solidified under the United States Constitution. Flash forward to 1812. How secure was our nation, our republic, when the British tried to siege us again? And we said, hell no, it's not going to happen. Go ahead and saunter back off across the pond. Go eat some old bangers of mush. See, any kind of opposition to our rights, our fundamental and inalienable rights, when it comes down to it, again, this is another fundamental block, a concrete foundational block of what makes this country great to begin with. It still remains as our country being great. The resiliency of the American people who are empowered and recognize the empowerment and their obligation and their ultimate duty of not only preserving, protecting, and defending their rights, but utilizing them and having the power to do so. If we do not have that ability, if that is taken from us, whether it would have been from Hillary Clinton or whether it is going to be from Donald Trump, because we know he's going to violate the Constitution. He wants to keep implements of Obamacare as quote-unquote law, which means it's a violation of the Constitution and ultimately your rights. How secure are we as a republic if we allow that to happen? He wants to talk about security. He's using the word, he's hijacked the term security, just like all Fabians do. They hijack these buzzwords and phrases and certain elements and things, and they give them different meanings. Why? To appease the masses, to lull them into a daze, in order to keep them under their thumb as peasants and peons and servants.
Well, you know what it reminds me of, Jeremy? We've oftentimes quoted this. It was from Benjamin Franklin. Those that sacrifice essential liberties for a fleeting sense of, what was the word, security? Yes, I believe it was. Deserve neither liberty nor security, and shall surely have neither. And Donna, yes, thank you for tuning in. You people are the greatest. You see, our entire purpose here is to empower the American people. We want this nation to succeed. And the only way that it can succeed is if we, call out the people like the orange cheese fun Obama disaster that he is.
The Trumpalumpa.
Because what are they doing? They're not standing up for our position. They're not going to be. In fact, it was in the Washington Post, and WAPO is as far left as Joseph Stalin on a day that he's giddy and high. It's still, they said that he's going to weaken conservative groups, conservative voices. He will. Why? Because he ain't no faruking conservative. That's the problem. He went out and he lied about who he was. When you have somebody who lies like Hillary, that's okay. We know she's a liar. She's not claiming to represent our point of view. But with Don Trumpolini, the cheese von Bama, he is claiming to be a conservative. He is claiming to represent our political movement, our political party. That makes him even more dangerous because he's deceitful.
Well, here's what I have to say about that and him weakening conservative views. Okay, have at it. Go ahead and weaken conservative views and conservative groups. But I'm going to tell you right now, Cheeto Jeebus, you're going to have a hell of a time weakening radio aviation excellence, the Wright Flyer, our cherished first-class passenger listeners. Why? Because, see, we've shifted from being conservative. Yes, we hold conservative principles and values. However, we're emboldening them. See, we're known as what people are going to come to realize, and believe me when I say this, it's going to be tremendous. It's not going to be smally in any way. You know, it might be huge, but get used to the terminology and get used to, people organized under the Constitution, known as constitutional compositionists. Because, see, conservatism, yeah, it's there, but guess what? It's expanded on exponentially.
Yep.
Republicanism is it's dead. I'm here to tell people now republicanism is dead, and guess what? The Quaffinator killed it. The Quaffinator killed republicanism. Constitutional compositionism is what's going to pull this country through. That's what's going to preserve our republic.
And through the people. It has to be through the people. And that's exactly what constitutional compositionism is all about. The root words of that, constitution, of course, means our supreme law of the land. Composition, it means we go back to how it's composed. Not to the way that it's been reinterpreted, not to this idea from the Edmund Kozak types that think it's just a piece of paper. No, it's we go back to the clear and concise language within it. You know what's so beautiful about the Constitution? It's simple. You know why it's simple? Because it's based off of immutable truths that are timeless. That's the natural law. It means that we value our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, which cannot rightfully be taken away, encroached upon, belittled, or abridged by any rightful earthly authority without due process under the law. Now, here's another problem. You know, Trump walks back all of this other stuff. He's come forth and said that he's bigly with guns now, except that I recall that during one of the debates, when he was right there across from the witch herself, he said that she and he agreed on the no-fly, no-buy, and if you mention due process, we cry bill that would prohibit law-abiding, decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizens of their fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms. Because you can be erroneously placed on that list, and by the way, there's no due process to be placed on that list. Meaning, you don't get a notice in a hearing, they just stick you on that list. It's like being stuck onto Trump's door if you're one of those jewels. He's got those jewel-encrusted doors like some frickin' Russian autocrat there in Dump Tower. Well, that is not who we are. We are governed by the Constitution. We are defined by the Constitution. That is the only thing that draws us together as a nation and as a people. And then when you look at Stephen K. Bannon of Breitbart, who is a self-avowed Leninist alt-Reichist, as the chief counselor, that tells me right there exactly everything that Trump's going to do. Neither one of the major picks were constitutionalists. Of course, it would never be that case with Trump anyway. But Rinse and Repeatus, the guy that did the 2013 autopsy of why Romney failed, here, let me tell you why Romney failed. It's why McCain failed. It's because he didn't follow the Constitution.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah. See, and I want to address a couple of more comments here. Donna C. Fast, like the Ten Commandments, simple in truth. It's really simple. The Ten Commandments are rooted in God's. The Ten Commandments are God's law. See, God is He creates the law of nature. Therefore, the Ten Commandments are natural law. It's very simple. It's simplistic. A fifth grader can understand this. Quick, somebody fetch me a fifth grader, because, Trump certainly doesn't understand this. He doesn't care to understand. He doesn't want to understand it because he sees no value in it. And see, that tells me, again, if he sees no value in our shared United States Constitution, which is done on behalf of we the people, then he sees no value in the we the people. It's quite a conundrum, isn't it?
Oh, it
or
is.
quaff-nundrum, if you will.
Yeah,
And
I do like this term, quaff Nazi. Glenn,
Well, yes.
I have to give you props for that. That is
absolutely, Glenn,
hilarious.
the quaff Nazi. You know, folks, we really do appreciate the engagement and, you know, the feedback and the participation. Again, we do this, as Randy said, and as we've mentioned numerous times past, we do this for you. We want to empower you. And see, it's like I've said in the past couple of episodes, we don't want to be the only voice. We shouldn't have to be the only voice. We want all of you to be the voice, because all of you, along with us, makes up we the people. Again, the first three words of our shared Constitution, we the people. We are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. If we refuse to stand and be heard, if we refuse to exercise our rights while accepting responsibility of being held accountable for doing so, if we refuse to do that, then who will? You know, at first, you know, it's like that old saying goes, and I'm going to butcher this, I know I am. But when it goes back to World War II, you know, when the Nazis came for, you know, the people, you know, the
Certain
infants.
groups.
Certain groups, we stood by and did nothing. And then when they came for this group, we stood by and did nothing. Then when they came for us, there was nobody to do anything for us, nobody to stand up and speak for us, because everybody was gone. Mm-hmm. In a way, that's kind of how I feel like with the individuals who have thrown all of their support to Trump, have likened him to being God. Like those two quaffwits in Novi, Michigan.
Oh, God.
You know? Well, it's just like she said, you know, there's Jesus and then there's Trump. Well,
so what? That's
guess what? There's Funyuns and then there's, you know, Doritos. You know? It's illogical for people to behave that way. It is not the mindset of a rational and reasonable person. And those individuals are the ones who will gladly stay and remain silent when your rights are going to be taken from you. They've already forfeited their rights. They're already willing to give up their rights. So they've already willing to give up their rights. They can care less if you have yours. And they certainly won't stand to defend them.
Glenn made a good point, too, with them, you know, like over there at PMS NBC, basically trying to fan the flames with those protesters.
Yeah.
Trying to say that, you know, well, that proves he's a conservative, this, that, and the other. No, it doesn't. You know, he's right to say that Rachel Madcow with her foot and mouth disease there.
Rectal Manchow.
Is just going forth and spewing a bunch of nonsense. This is the other danger that we warned about, that they would try and use Trump as a way to stereotype true conservatives, people who truly value the Constitution from the get-go. And that's what they're going to do. And this is why I'm leery of what will be happening, what will be coming down the turnpike there in 2018. Because the ads already write themselves. Mm-hmm. These Republicans, they supported Don Trumpolini. Don Trumpolini is president. They're all Don Trumpolini. And guess what? You're not going to be able to run away from it. And this reminds me of something. Ann Coulter, Little Orphan Annie, Yap Yap Toto, Coulter the Floozy, I know, very short and concise name that we've come up with for her. She
It will get longer, folks. Trust us.
she repeated the mistake that Carl Rovestein made, Canned Ham made over there on the Quaff News Network, when he said, this is the first time since 1928 that the Republicans have controlled both Congress and the executive. Wrong. Wasn't it the guy he advised, George W. Bush, that in 2002, all of a sudden they had, control of both the presidency and the Congress, the legislature? Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. But here's the deal. This is the first time since 1928 that the Republicans have had as large of a majority that they do in both chambers, meaning House and Senate, and the president. Who happened to be president in 1928? Because we've always said that he would be the next whom? Herbert Hoover. So is that something we want to be saying a lot about? Because let's see, what happened in Hoover's administration that basically made conservatism go dormant from 1928 until 1964? The Great Depression.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, but don't all Hoovers suck?
Well, yeah, if they're vacuums. He was the broken one. He spewed more than I mean, that's what it came down to. But history is itself if you don't learn from the mistakes of the past.
Absolutely. And, again, the point is, we've laid all of this out for individuals. Now, here's a question that I think, we could probably get an answer from Glenn or Donna on this. Has Fox News laid out any of this stuff to the degree that we have? No. Has Lush Bimbo laid out any of this stuff to the degree we have? No. Has Sean, I wish I can bask myself in the flaky dandruff of hair Trumpolini, Sean Wannity, has he laid out any of this stuff? No. Has any of the other pundits laid out any of this stuff, or talk show hosts laid out any of this stuff to the degree that we have? I think the closest individual would be Glenn Beck. And see, Glenn Beck, again, love the guy to death. Absolutely love him. I have not yet met him in person, and someday I hope I could meet him in person. I'd like to shake his hand and, have a conversation with him over a cup of coffee or whatever and discuss some things with him. I mean, I would even be open to discussing Mark Levin. However, to a sinister level, I would hope that the, conversation or topic of Lincoln would come up. But, whatever the case may be. But see, Levin kind of, hung himself out to dry with this because he decided, he says, I'm going to vote for Trump because I don't want Hillary to be it. Okay, I understand that mindset. But the thing is, if you're willing to take a risk on an individual to stave off a certain magnitude of evil, but yet you're willing to incorporate a lesser magnitude of evil in order to prevent the bigger evil from happening, ultimately, are you really staving off a larger evil? Because the way I'm looking at it is when you vote the lesser of two evils, like we did, and we can even look at George W. Bush as and Al Gore and John Kerry as the lesser of two evils. Guess what? In that case, and I'm going to use the example of George W. Bush, the American people got complacent. When you become complacent and when you lose your sight of being virtuous and vigilant with respect to the Constitution, you get things like the Patriot Act. You get things like No Child Left Behind. You get things, ultimately, after they leave office, Obamacare. Heightened gun control laws. See, voting the lesser of two evil will most assuredly always usher in the greater evil at some point in time because of complacency.
Well, it
We
also
cannot afford-
desensitizes you to evil. It desensitizes you to evil. Is what
Absolutely.
happens. It makes evil become the new norm. And Glenn, I got to agree with you there. I don't watch any of Quaff News anymore. Wanity
Yeah.
makes me sick.
Yes.
Faux News
Faux
did
News.
force feed Trump and not Cruz. Yep, that's why they are
Common
the
Core.
Quaff News Network.
Don
Yes,
mentions Common
is-
Core. Well, I think
yeah.
now with Trump wanting, an education system's too expensive here, why don't we call it Common Quaff?
Yeah.
I mean, he might as
We
well,
ought to.
he's stealing stuff from Obama now, keeping the same policies, perpetuance of policies from Obama. Why not just go ahead and dissect it and just change it a little bit like he's done and just call it Common Quaff?
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing.
Or the ACA,
Michael
the
Wiener,
Affordable Quaff Act.
Michael Wiener Savage, Michael the
Mm-hmm.
Wiener, no relation to Anthony the Wiener. Michael Wiener Savage is now mad that Trump put rinse and repeat us in as the chief of staff. Hey, Mikey, little Mikey,
voted for him.
we told you not to vote for the dip, that he would do that. But again, these people, they project their own self-value, their own self-worth onto their candidate. You can't do that. Again, what is it that makes America great beyond the Constitution? It's the American people. Why? Because when you go to the beautiful, poetic, and prophetic language that is the opening line to the preamble to the Constitution, it says, "We the people do ordain and establish in order to promote a more perfect union, in order to ensure domestic tranquility and to secure the blessings of liberty for our posterity." That's why we have this government. This government is contractually based between we the people and the government. It's why
Government
in
by
the First
consent of the
Amendment
governed.
it says that we can petition the government for a redress of grievances. There is no other government on earth that has that as a quintessential fundamental aspect of their governing document or what their supreme law is. That is uniquely American. And that is why we must strive to protect it. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we do want to thank you for tuning in. We couldn't do this without you. We do this for you. That being said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant around for one last round of alcohol because if poor Glenn had to watch, Sean Wanity there, I think that Glenn would need a double shot. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined by my first officer, Jeremy. As always, we thank you for tuning in, and we love that you participate. We really do. We want more of that.
Like, share, retweet, the whole 9 yards. And, folks, we would really like to show YouTube and the rest of the world exactly how powerful your voices are that should be heard. Folks, likes, dislikes, whatever the case is, get as many views as you can on this video. If any of our videos reach, 1,000 likes, 1,000 shares, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be tremendous. I promise, believe me. Folks, we need to get this out there. We need to have our voices heard. And when I say our voices, I'm referring to we the people, the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty and constitutional compositionists.
Thank you again, folks. We will see you next time. Please do take care.